This is the Pythagorean Theorem Worksheet we did in class on Thursday, February 21st. Pythagorean Theorem should be a review for most of you, but for some of you it might not be. So I just want to make sure I go through all these problems to make sure everyone knows what they're doing. Okay, so Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It applies only for right triangles. I'm going to have a video of the proof, going over the proof of it using similar triangles in another video. Okay, but we basically have a right triangle. Okay, and then the Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. Okay. We have legs. Okay. So here's our right angle. Right triangle is defined as a triangle that has a right angle. So we have one right angle or a 90-degree angle. The legs are adjacent to the right angle. And then the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. Okay. So the two legs are the adjacent pieces, and this is going to be our A and our B. So our Pythagorean theorem says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The legs are going to be the A and the B. And the hypotenuse is going to be the C. So it doesn't matter which, this could be A or that could be A, and then that could be B or that could be B. Right? It doesn't really matter. As long as your legs are A and B, we can switch a squared plus b squared or whatnot, as long as your hypotenuse is on the other side of the equation. The hypotenuse is also always the longest side. Right? So find the length of a hypotenuse. So here we have a right triangle. We want to find the length of the hypotenuse, call it x. It says, so here's our right angle. One of the legs is 15, the other leg is 8, so the legs are the ones adjacent to the right angle, so we have 8 and 15. So again, we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are the legs, so that's 15 and 8, so we have 15 squared plus 8 squared, and the hypotenuse we label as x, our unknown. And our hypotenuse is the c, so that's going to be x squared. We're going to put in x for c, substitute in x for c. 15 squared is 225. 8 squared is 64. 8 times 8 is 64. 15 times 15 is 225. 225 plus 64 is 289. Then when we take this, right, and then we have 289 is x squared. To get rid of the square, we need to do the inverse operation, which is a square root. So we need to take the square root of 289 and x squared, and we get x equals plus or minus 17. But we can't have a negative length. So our answer is just simply going to be 17. Can't have a negative length, so we can't have a negative 17. Number 2. So the legs of a right triangle have lengths A and B. Right, and the letters A, B, and C are kind of arbitrary. The point is that the square of the two legs added together is going to equal the square of the hypotenuse, the length of the hypotenuse. Right, so it doesn't need to be A, B, and C. We can do X, Y, and Z, L, M, and N, E, D, and F, whatever we want to do. So the key is it's the legs squared, the one leg squared, the length of one leg squared plus the length of the second leg squared equals the length of the hypotenuse squared. Okay. So the legs of a right triangle have lengths A and B. So we have a right triangle. So these are two separate problems, part A and part B. So part A, we know we have B, so we know we have 18. We don't know what A is, and we have C is 82. So A squared plus 18 squared equals 82 squared. Okay, we got to grab a calculator for this. 18 squared, so 18 times 18. 324. Then 82 squared is 6,724. Okay, then we have to subtract 324 from both sides. It's going to give us a squared equals 6,400. Take the square root of both sides, we get a equals square root 6,400 is 80. So again, it's plus or minus 80, but we can't have a negative side length, so we know it's going to be positive 80. Positive 80. Part B, we have another triangle. So this is all part A. Right, so I'm going to delete it, and then I'll do part B. Okay, so this is part A. And now we're going to do part B. So now we have a right triangle. A is 12. We don't know B, and then C is the hypotenuse, which is 37. We know C is the hypotenuse because it tells us. We know A and B are the legs. So A is 12, B is just B because we don't know what B is. Okay. So 12 squared plus B squared equals 37 squared. 12 squared is 144. 37 squared is 1369. Okay, subtract 144 from both sides. Okay, and we get b squared equals 1225. How do we get rid of a square? We have to do the inverse operation, which is a square root. So square root of 1225 is 35. So again, plus or minus 35. Okay, plus or minus 35, but we can't have a negative side length, so it's just 35. Number 3 asks the measure of 3 sides of a triangle are 9, 16, and 20. Determine whether the triangle is a right triangle. Explain your answer. So if it's a right triangle, we know that a squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. Okay, this is true of all right triangles. Okay, so we have, what would be our hypotenuse if this was a right triangle? It would be the longest side, which is 20. And then our legs would that be 9 and 16. Okay, so A and B would be 9 and 16, and then C would be 20, our hypotenuse. So the question is asking, can we make a right triangle with this information, with these side lengths? The way we have to figure out that is we have to see if it fits the equation. So 9 squared plus 16 squared is going to have to equal 20 squared. Okay, so 9 squared is 81. 16 squared is 256. Okay, 20 squared is 400. Okay, add these together and we get 337. Does 337 equal 400? No, it does not. So our answer is no. The square of both the legs added together does not add up to 400, which is the square of the hypotenuse. Okay, so no, they are not right triangles. Still a triangle, a very valid triangle. It's just we don't have a right angle here. Number 4. Okay, the television screen, the size of a television screen is given by the length of the diagonal of the screen. What size is a television screen that is 21.6 inches wide and 16.2 inches high? So we have a television, which is a rectangle. It is 21.6 inches wide and 16.2 inches high. So the length of a television is measured by its diagonal. So here's a diagonal. Right, so if you have a 50-inch TV, the 50 inches is diagonal. It's measured diagonally. So they're asking what size TV is this. So that means we have to find the length of the diagonal. So a rectangle has 4 right angles. So right here we have a right triangle. So 21.6 squared plus 16.2 squared, those are our legs, is going to give us the length of the hypotenuse squared. 21.6 squared gives us 466.56. 16.2 squared is going to give us 262.44. That's going to add up to a nice even number. $729, which I believe is 27. So square to both sides. Right, we have a square. To get rid of the square, we have to do the inverse operation, which is a square root. Square root of 729 is 27. Again, plus or minus 27, but we can't have a negative size of the TV, so it has to be positive 27. It has to be our only answer choice here. So 27 inches. 27 inches. That's the length of the diagonal. So we have a 27-inch TV. Okay. Item 5, if the diagonal of a rectangle is measured, so we have a rectangle. The diagonal is measured to be 60 inches. And one side is measured to be 48 inches. What is the length of the other side? Okay, again, rectangles are defined as having 4 right angles. So we have a triangle here. Right triangle, right? The right triangle is defined as a triangle with a right angle. So the two sides adjacent to the right angle are 48 and the unknown side, which we're going to call x. So we have 48 squared plus x squared is going to equal the hypotenuse squared, and that's 60. So 48 squared is 2,304 plus x squared equals 60 squared is going to be 3,600. I was doing the calculator though just to make sure. Okay, subtract 2,304. And we get x squared equals 1296, which is going to be something. That's going to be an even number. 36. So again, plus or minus 36, but we can't have a negative side length, so it's going to be x equals 36 inches. Right, 36 inches. Okay. Number 6, a disabled ship radio. A disabled ship radios to shore for help. The Coast Guard determines that the ship is 16 miles east and 43 miles north of the station. So here's the station. So we want 16 miles east, 43 miles north. What is the shortest direct distance between the ship and the Coast Guard station? So the shortest distance is going to be right here. That's going to be our hypotenuse. Okay, so again, east and north are perpendicular to each other, so we have a right angle. Okay. What is the direct distance between? So we want to know what the distance is. The direct distance between the shortest sides, so that's going to be x. So our legs squared and added together, so 16 squared plus 43 squared is going to equal x squared, the hypotenuse squared. 16 squared. 256, I knew that one. I don't know 43 squared. 1849 equals x squared. Add them together, so plus 256. 2105 equals x squared. I don't think this is going to be an even number, a whole number, I should say. Square root 45.8803. So x, again, equals plus or minus 45.8803, but we have to have a positive distance, so it's only going to be 45.8803 miles. The shortest distance is 45.88. Again, just to add we know the hypotenuse is the longest side, so 43 and 16 are both small. We also know two sides of a triangle have to add up to more than the third side of the triangle. Right, that was our triangle inequality theorem. A plus B has to be greater than C. A plus C has to be greater than B, and B plus C has to be greater than A. All right, 7, find the missing side of the triangle. So here's our right angle. So the legs are adjacent to the right angle, so it's the legs added together squared added together is going to equal the hypotenuse squared. That's 144. That's 81. 144 and 81 is going to give us 235. 225, which square root is 15, right? 225, take the square root, right? And we're going to get plus or minus 15, but we have to have the positive length, so it's going to be 15. All right, last one, number 8. Tara leans a 17-foot ladder against a house. The bottom of the ladder is 8 feet from the house. How high up the side of the house is the top of the ladder? Okay. So how high up the side of the house is the ladder? That's going to be x. So here's our right angle. So the legs are 8 and x. So we're going to add the square of the legs to equal, and set that equal to the square of the hypotenuse, which is 17, the hypotenuse being opposite 17. 8 squared is 64. We have x squared, and then 17 squared is 289. Subtract 64. We get x squared equals 225. Okay, square root, we just said we knew that one was 15. Again, plus or minus 15, but the height of the house is not negative, it's positive. So it's 15 feet. 15 feet. Oops. 15. Okay. So you guys should be able to complete that assignment pretty easily. I hope. If you have more questions, though, certainly ask. Okay. 17 and a half minutes. That's the quickest video, I think.